Hello and welcome. This is the Mugo Web webinar on Book Club Kit Best Practices. My name is Bethany Morse. I'm the Business Development Manager for Mugo Web. I also was a public librarian for 16 years, which is part of why I'm presenting this today, because one of my roles was specifically helping to manage book club kits. So I'm going to be sharing a lot from my personal experience managing those and also things that I have learned from other libraries. Because in my role at Mugo Web for the past couple of years, I have been helping develop and promote our book club kit solution to help manage these. And that solution, which I will be showing at the end of today, is really been informed and built by the many libraries that are using it. Our clients requested that we build that, and then we spun it off as a standalone for other libraries, and truly everyone who's been a part of it has helped make new features for it and make it more useful for libraries. So we'll be showing that later today, but what we are going to be talking about for the first half of this webinar is just about book club kits and kits in general. So we're going to be starting with this with the assumption that maybe you don't have book club kits yet, but you are considering adding them to your library. So we'll talk about the early phases of how you plan this collection, how you select titles for it, what you put in a kit, storing it, which is incredibly important. We'll talk about other types of kits and library of things. And then we're going to be sharing ideas for how to market your book club kits. So even if you do have a book club kit collection, as we go through this, hopefully there's some points in all of these sections that will help make you think, get you some new ideas and new ways of approaching your collection as well. First of all, why do libraries offer book club kits? This bit of data that I'm sharing right now is brand new. It was just published a couple of weeks ago, and it is specific to US libraries. So my experience comes from US libraries because that's where I'm based. We at Mugo Web work with a lot of Canadian libraries, and I'll share the Canadian numbers in a moment. But this one was just published, and I think this is kind of fascinating to look at. But first of all, people are reading books. That's always exciting as librarians to hear. It's like, yeah, people are reading more lately, which is great. And that's what the rest of this report shows. Book club kits in general, when your library is offering them, it is a way to help foster community around the love of books. It's a way to help your patrons have more socialization and meet new people. It's also a great way to promote your library's programs. Book club members are people who already love books and are going to be drawn to the library and appreciate the services and things that you are offering. This particular data from the US shows that of US adults, the broad US adults, 7% say that they've participated in a book club in the past year. Now, 7% is not a huge number, but when you're talking about the population as a whole, that's still like 20 million people right there. So that's a lot. And then it also shows that women are far more likely to be a part of book clubs. I think that is a skewed number. I think that is mostly true, but also don't count men out for this. In my experience, when given the opportunity, the library run book clubs that we had in my community, men attended those and read the books and discussed, and it was great. I think just oftentimes men don't think about forming book clubs, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to participate. The other interesting part of this data that came out is that even though audiobooks are increasing and ebooks are increasing, print books are still by far the preferable format for reading among the US population, at least, which bodes well for book club kits too, because these are almost always going to be physical items that you are circulating. Now, many of our clients are Canadian. We serve a lot of Canadian libraries, so I also want to talk about these numbers as it relates to Canada. This is the closest I could find that replicates some of that data. This is a few years out of date. The link here, this is a really interesting article about the use of prevalence of book clubs in Canada. I will say that these numbers are a little misleading too, because this is a self-selected survey response group. So these are people who have already identified as readers. So this is not a general population like the Pew study was. So that's why you see of the people who identify as readers, 33% in 23 said that they participated in a book club meeting. That's huge. But again, that number is likely a little skewed. However, anecdotally, I would say that I do think Canadian libraries, have more book clubs and people are participating in those more. So that's interesting to look at. The other bit of data from this that really shocked me was the age breakdown. Typically in the US, book club members are going to be older adults. However, this shows that it's actually the younger readers who are sitting down and discussing their books and having formalized clubs around reading, which is fascinating. The article also theorizes that some of that might have to do with book talk as well, and kind of influencer book Instagram and all of that. So something to consider. I think that is fascinating. So again, book club kits are a great way to foster community, promote your library, and just share the love of reading and make things more accessible to people who want to get together for this. So with that in mind, you're planning to start a book club kit collection at your library, or again, maybe you already have one, but here are some key things that you need to consider. Book club kit collections are expensive. This is not something that you necessarily just want to throw a lot of money at without knowing if there's interest for it in your community. So you want to gather some information. Are there book clubs active in your community? Is there interest in book clubs in your community, even if there are ones that are not active yet? What library partnerships already exist that would make use of these kits that you could perhaps collaborate with on, both on building your collection and circulating them? What is a typical size of a book club for your community? Are there larger groups where you have 10 to 15 people who are gathering? Is it smaller? Is it 4 to 5 people? That's going to be really important as you're determining the size of your kits. And then also look and see what are the most popular genres that are circulating. What are books that people are going to want to check out? Now, these are things that you need to consider. I mentioned you need to gather this data. This isn't something that is good to rely purely on anecdotal evidence for. Survey your patrons, talk to them, talk to the community, get some hard numbers. You may be completely surprised by what you find. For instance, in that last bit of data we looked at, it might be younger people who are looking for this. Maybe they have entirely different interests than you would expect for older book club members. So survey, ask these questions. And even if you have established book club kits, book clubs change, trends change. Continually be surveying as you have this collection, as you circulate it, as you are promoting these programs, and be prepared to change occasionally based on the data that you find. So with those questions in mind, you now need to consider how are you going to go about selecting your titles. Now, a lot of this is just basic collection development, and your librarians, you know how to select good books. But when it comes to book club kits, there are a couple of additional things you want to consider. So for that first one, how many copies are you going to put in each kit? This is where that survey information comes in handy, because maybe you do have smaller groups. Maybe your book club kits, book clubs are large. Maybe a lot of these are checked out by other organizations that need to accommodate a classroom or a adult day center or something like that. But however many copies you include, each copy you add is an additional cost. So it's something to keep in mind. It's also important to think about, if you're going to have a book club kit and have 15 books per kit, how are you going to store those? How are people going to carry those to and from their car if they're checking them out? And then also, do you standardize that number across all of your kits? Or maybe do you have book titles and different kits of different sizes, and you just make sure it's clear when the patron is checking this out how many copies they're getting and what is included in that. You also need to think about what format of book, what type of book. So we don't really have mass marketing paperbacks anymore. We have trade or hardback, and sometimes you have a couple of variation in there. But you need to consider the expense of each of those, the wear and tear on each of those types of books. Book club kits take a lot of punishing. They're typically thrown around a lot, being carried in bags and other things. So they can get beat up pretty quick. So, how are you going to make sure that they are going to last? And if you go with something a little bit more durable, like a hardback, again, that's an increase in cost and also storage space. So you need to consider what types you want to have. Again, is this standardized? A lot of times libraries have a specific policy where it's like, for our book club kits, these are more expensive. We're only going to buy books that are available in paperback, or we're only going to buy in this specific format. Just something to consider there. And then again, collection development wise, what type of books are you including? Are you sticking to the classics, things that people will always want to read year to year, that there's always a demand for? Are you focusing on the bestsellers, the hot book club books of the year, of the month? There are all kinds of celebrity book clubs out there, and oftentimes groups want to read those. Are you getting the ones that have movie tie-ins? All of these can help build interest, but also sometimes those are the more expensive books. And also, if it's something that's a flash in the pan, this might be a great kit for 1 year. How many book clubs can actually check this out in a year? Is this going to be 3 people get a chance at this, 3 groups get a chance at this, and then nobody else is interested in it in the future? These are all things to consider as part of collection development, and kind of formalize how you want to build your specific book club kit collection. So once you've decided what type of books and formatting all those, what do you put in a book club kit? So of course, your kit has to include multiple copies of the book. That's the whole point of a book club kit. It is something that an individual can check out from your library, and they can share these books among their club and organize that. And it's easier for them. Everybody can get a copy. That's great. So obviously, you're going to include your books. But maybe you want to include alternative formats within that kit. So maybe you include a large type copy in there. So that's available to people who have trouble reading smaller print. Maybe you want to include an audiobook. It used to be easier to include audiobooks because you could just throw in the CDs and people could use that. Fewer people have CD players. So what does it look like now if you're including an audiobook version? Are you including a playaway, something that's self-contained that they can listen to? More expensive, but it is a physical copy that they can use and share. Or you putting a QR code that links to the Libby item for this particular title that they can check out on their device and hope that it's available when they want to read it. There are different ways you can handle that. A lot of book clubs, a lot of libraries put like resources in there for leading a discussion. We used to do this, and for every kit that we had, it had a full binder that had discussion questions and interviews with the author and historical points of interest and local history tie-ins, all those types of things. And it was a really, really great resource that took a lot of time to put together. And after we surveyed the book clubs using this, we learned that none of them were looking at this at all. They just did not care. So maybe that's not necessary. And you don't have to put that in, but it's a nice thing to have as well. Now, this next thing I think is essential. This was one of the absolute best things we included in our book club kits, and that was a checkout list. And this was a generic template that I made, and I printed hundreds of these, and it had a space to write the book title at the top. This is kind of a little mock-up example of it over here. And then it would have the books that we had numbered. That is another thing that we found was kind of essential. No matter what type of book or format that you were using, you want to do something to protect it. You want to cover it in some way, and you want to identify it as part of this kit. So we would put library labels on it. We didn't process these the same way as we would a book with a collection. They didn't get individual barcodes. The kit got a barcode as a whole, but we would put the kit name on the book itself, and we would very distinctly number it. So if there were 8 copies in there, it would be 1 through 8. And then that way on this sheet, you can stick one of these in the bags each time you send it out, and whoever checks it out can write next to the number which club person got that book. This turned around our loss rate for books and book club kits. It is so much easier for your patrons to keep track of this way, and they can follow up with the person who, oh, the kid is missing number 3. I know I've got to go check in with Kathy and get that copy. Made a huge difference. So easy to do. Absolutely recommend that with all of your kits that have individual elements that are being lent out outside of the library. The other thing I highly recommend is put some promotion for your library in these kits every time you send them out. The person who checked out this kit is a library user, and that's great, but that doesn't mean everyone in their book club is a library user. So put some bookmarks in there of the library information. Just replenish that each time it goes out. So people will use those. They'll know where the book came from. They will look up other resources from the library. And if this is going out for a book club that's in August, throw in your August newsletter. Put in upcoming events for adults in there. Use this to market your library. All right. Another important discussion is how to package your kits. Now, this is kind of a story in 3 parts, because when I started our book club kits, our biggest concern was these are heavy, and we have patrons with mobility issues that maybe aren't going to be able to carry these easily. So the first thing we got were these canvas bags that had wheels on them. They weren't quite luggage as is depicted in this picture, but they had wheels, and then they folded up and the books went in the bottom of them, and people could drag them out and not have to worry about carrying the weight. This was a great, well-intentioned idea, but the bags were awful, and they were bulky and proved to be more problematic than they were helpful. So we kind of switched from that to a bag that looked very similar to this. It was a zippered bag, so nothing would fall out. It fit 10 copies and that binder in it. And it was easy to transport. However, it also had some issues with it. Primarily that if this came back to the library and got checked back in, and uh, the person checking it in was busy at the desk, didn't open it up to count the books, didn't open it up to see if there was anything else in there. Book clubs like discussing and having food and beverage, and sometimes things make their way into the bag. And if it gets transport back to the central location after that and it wasn't opened, there were some sad discoveries, I will say. So you can't catch everything. So we also transitioned from having these in a central location to actually putting them out on the shelves. So when we did that, the other problem with the closed bag was that it was hard to see what was inside it. Even if it had a tag on the side, it was branded, it said book club kit. People couldn't see what the title was. We moved to a transparent bag that was branded with the library's image on the front. And that was great because when we put that out on the shelf, people could see at a glance what those books were. When it was being returned to the library, staff could easily see if there was something in there that wasn't supposed to be, or if there wasn't the correct number of items in there. And it just worked out really well for us. Now, every library is going to be a little bit different and have different needs, but I became a huge fan of these see-through bags for this purpose. I will also point out that our state sent library kits, book club kits to libraries for staff use. And they did use actual luggage, like carry-on luggage like this, because they would have 15 copies of a book and a large type and an audiobook. And that needed to handle being thrown in the back of a courier van or a mail delivery person, because they would often mail these out through ILL. And in that case, this was a great solution for that. So there are lots of things to take into account. So how many books you have, what you're including in the kits, and who is going to be using these, whether it's staff members who can handle a little bit extra weight, whether it's a patron who it needs to be easily transportable. That brings us to the storing of kits, which is always fun. So there are two ways primarily that I see libraries using kits like this. They either have them as a browsable collection, meaning these are on shelves in front of patrons in the library where patrons can walk up and pick something up and go to the desk and check it out, and it's immediately available and it's visible. People who maybe wouldn't think about book club kits know it's there. And that's a great way of doing it. It has some drawbacks. So the drawbacks primarily being that when they are all in their bags and all on the shelf like that, it takes up a lot of space. So it might end up being at one of the larger libraries within a system, and maybe it's not available at all of the libraries. It's also very hard to schedule and plan for that. And book clubs in particular like planning things out in advance. They like thinking about what books they're going to be reading next. They like knowing and letting people have plenty of time to access those and to go out and find them, even if they're not using a book club kit. And sometimes they plan those up to a year at a time. And if it is a browsable collection, unless you have some very distinct policies in place, it's going to be hard for them to go and know that the book that they want is going to be available on their book club date. So more often I see libraries having these available as collections, but they are stored in one central location. So in that case, people request them either by calling the library or putting a hold on them online. and it can be sent to different locations. You always know what's available, and it's much easier to plan that out in advance. It also gives you a lot more options as far as storing your kits goes. For instance, if the kits are in a central location, they don't have to be stored in their bags, and probably shouldn't be in that instance, because again, that's not the healthiest way for a book to live. So you can have them stacked on shelves, and then when it needs to go out, you have to have a staff person who is available to do this, but they can go and grab the bag and put the books in there and attach the barcode and put the materials in there and send it out. And that way you don't have to have as many bags as you have book kits. It's very unlikely, unless you have a small collection, that they're all going to be checked out at the same time. So you can save some money that way. And this is how I see them most often done. But it also, you need to consider here that it's not as visible to patrons. You really have to work to make sure that they know this is available and easy to access. So easy to request, easy to schedule. Real quick, I do want to talk about other types of kits, because while this is primarily about book club kits, there are all different types of things that are similar, that your library can lend. And honestly, once you have this practice in place, it is much easier to transfer it out to other types of materials as well. So one of the things I want to talk about are memory kits or bifocal kits. Now, this image is from a company that sells these, so they have them pre-made. I got to meet this company at PLA a month or so ago, but you can also make these up yourself. I have used these. These are fantastic. I haven't used them from this company, but I've used the ones that my library made up. So the idea of a bifocal or memory kit is that it allows older adults to remember things from their past and their history, and help engage skills for memory retention. These are also really great intergenerationally because they can spark some interesting conversations. The premise behind these is that there is something in here that stimulates each of the five senses. So for adults with memory issues, using more of your senses can help trigger different memories. So you will have a discussion guide. You will have oftentimes music that you can play from this period or event. You often have something that can be smelled, that's sometimes like scratch and sniff cards or a candle, or something that is not consumable. It has a craft oftentimes associated with it. And while you would not put food in these kits, it will often have a recipe that whoever is running the program can make something that would evoke the taste of this as well. These are really cool kits. This is great if you have a partnership with senior centers or a community that has a lot of institutions that could use these. They're fun. They really can be an interesting program to run. Another thing that's quite possible, puzzles and board games. So if you are circulating board games and puzzles, the thing you need to consider is that these have tiny pieces. It's not like 8 copies of a single book that you can look at easily and see it's all there. So you need to have a plan in place and procedures in place so that when these go out and come back in, you can check them to make sure everything's there. With puzzles, you're not going to be counting all the puzzle pieces. And puzzles are a really nice, affordable collection because oftentimes you can ask for donations in your community. How often are you going to redo a puzzle that you've put together once before? People like swapping these. The chance to check one out and use it and return it is great. And then if it's donated and pieces go missing, you can repurpose that for other craft projects and things. It doesn't have to be replaced necessarily. But where board games are concerned, there are so many out there now and so many different companies and independent companies that make board games. A lot of them love libraries and love knowing that people can access their games this way and have procedures and policies in place to send you free pieces if they go missing. Um, I highly recommend reaching out to board game companies and asking about this. A lot of them have them on their website. But for things like this, good policy, make copies of the instruction book, keep those separately. Make sure you're also packaging these in something other than their original containers. Board games containers can be great, but they take a lot of beating in a collection like this. So there are things you can get that kind of hold them closed. I recommend just repackaging them in something like the smaller Rubbermaid boxes. It makes things last much longer and be easier to find. So what are other types of kits that you can have? Here are some that I have seen that are really popular among other libraries, especially right now. Birding kits are great. What would you put in a birding kit? Binoculars, a book on identifying different types of birds from your region, a tool for identifying bird calls. Pickleball's really popular right now. Maybe someone doesn't want to invest in that until they've had a chance to try it out. So have some paddles, have some instructions, put those together as a kit. One of the things that worked really well in my community were these homeschool kits that we put together. So each one was based on a different set of principles or curriculum or STEM activity. This is great because oftentimes homeschoolers don't have access to these types of educational tools. They can be expensive and you might not use them continually. Someone could check this out just for the time that they were doing this curriculum set or this activity and have the experience with them and return them and check something else out. So these were really popular and we had all kinds for different curriculums and ideas there. When it comes to other collections, though, that's one thing I want to recommend is base these on your local community and the activities that your community is doing. One of our libraries in Ontario checks out snowshoes. And that's brilliant. And obviously, they only do that for part of the year because you're not going to be using those in summer. That's something that I think is such a cool resource for the community that I here in Kentucky would not do. There's not going to be a library in Kentucky that's checking out snowshoes. It's just not relevant to us here. But it is to that community. And so those are the type of things that you want to think about. What is going to serve your patrons the most? Oftentimes I find the most successful kits are the ones that kind of focus on group activities. So that includes your book club kits, that includes your board games and those types of things. But the other things that work really well are those items that are expensive and really helpful, but you only need them occasionally. So over here you can see one of our libraries, East Gwillimbury. This is from their Library of Things page. The automotive code reader. This is a perfect example of something that someone's really going to need to use this once or twice. And then if they bought it themselves, it would be sitting on a shelf for years. But at the library, so many different people can use that and they can check it out when they need to. I think this is a great example of the types of things that have limited use but are very helpful to have. In general, you want to avoid things with consumable materials, but sometimes you're going to have a budget or a grant that acknowledges and accommodates for that. One of the kits that did really well in my library was a GED kit. So that's the test to get the alternative to the high school diploma. And so this kit had a study guide in it. It had a practice test in it. It had the instruction book, and then it had paper and pencils and things that we knew might not be coming back. It had a calculator in it. But we built that into our budget for that kit, that every time it came back, we're going to be replacing the paper, we're going to be replacing the pencils. We have extra calculators for this purpose. So avoid consumable items in your kits unless you've already accounted for that in your budget. All right, now my favorite part is marketing your book club kits. How do you let people know that you have this resource available at your library? So, first of all, connect with your local businesses. And this isn't just the senior centers and those places that might be using these kits. Look at any of the places where people are gathering and waiting around for something. I know here in the US, a lot of YMCAs host book clubs. So a lot of activity centers, recreation centers also host book clubs or have people that already have a social activity that maybe they want to do something else with. Put posters up there, talk to them, to the organizers and facilitators there, see if something like this is of interest. Now, when I put up posters, QR codes are great. People are using those more and more now. That's a great way to direct back to your website. But the posters with the terrible information at the bottom, these are terrible puns. I had to include that one. These always got taken. Every time we put these out, we would go and month to month update them. People always tore these off. Sometimes having a little physical reminder is the best way to get people to actually follow up on something. And maybe there's not a place to leave brochures or bookmarks or those types of things. But if you can put up a poster and let people tear off a little slip with the information they need, that always worked for us. And they're also not seen as often anymore, which for me means draws more attention to them when people are looking. You also have the opportunity to partner with local businesses. Book clubs in particular need a place to meet. And if that's not inside the library, maybe it's at a local coffee shop. Maybe it's at a local bar. Talk to those owners and see if they will give a discount to people who are meeting there with their book club if they show their library card. This is more business for those institutions, and it's promoting the library services as well. So oftentimes you can have a really nice partnership that way. This was one of my favorite programs. When we started really promoting our book club kits, we hosted a book club tea. And this was on a Saturday. Everybody at the library brought in different teacups. We had some refreshments. We had tablecloths, made it look really nice, had these little round tables, and invited anyone in the community who was interested in book clubs to come attend. And the reason this worked so well is a lot of people who were like, I really want to belong to a book club, but I don't know anybody in this area, or I don't know, maybe my friends aren't readers, but I would like to discuss books. We set them up at these tables. We talked about book clubs. We talked about, how to lead a discussion and those types of things. But we had them at these tables and had little questionnaires so they could get to know the people at their table. We had a little thing kind of like a dance card, so that if they met someone who they were like, ooh, we hit it off. We'd love to talk more about books. They could exchange contact information. This was just such a fun way to celebrate book clubs, to promote the book club kits. And then we had like 6 new book clubs that formed out of people meeting at this event. Um, Again, it's just providing a safe space. They know that the library is going to be okay. They can talk to different people here. There's someone to step in if needed. But the library is all about fostering community and library use and letting people build these friendships. Sometimes it's a hard thing to do as an adult. So this was a great opportunity to get people interested in that. This is also a great opportunity to survey these people. So we learned at this event that the biggest genre that people were most interested in was mystery books. So we actually created a library run book club called the Mystery Society out of this event. And we had 2 different meeting times for it. So we had a morning meeting and then we had an evening meeting. And each month there would be a different mystery book, and people could pick up that copy at the library. And then we would get together and discuss it. And it was library run and it was great. So this was a very successful event. This one, I'm going to shout out one of the local bookstores in my area, Foxing Books, because they do this regularly. And this is such a great idea. And I think libraries could do this very successfully as well. So, in the bookstore version of it, they have the Battle of the Book Clubs, where they say, this is our book this quarter. So, this poster, it was The Shining. And book clubs all have a chance to read that book over a couple of months, and then they meet in a bar and they have group-based trivia. So you show up with your book club and you're a trivia team and you answer trivia questions about the book, and then the winner gets a prize that is sponsored by a local business. This could easily be done with libraries, especially around like the Libby reads, so the community reads books where you have unlimited copies of those. That's a great way to do it. Or maybe you do this once a year. Maybe you do this and say, here are the top 10 most circulated book club kits of the year. We're going to ask you trivia questions about this. Show up, winner's going to get a prize. It's a fun activity. Book clubs can participate even if they didn't check out the kits, because that's another book club. Once you have them there, you can tell them about your book club kits, show those off, show them the process of how to check this out and access it. Okay, so now we are jumping into how do you manage your kits? This is also part of marketing your kits. Your kits need to be easily found by your patrons, and they need to have an easy way to schedule those and to check them out. And your staff needs an easy way of keeping track of them. We're going to jump into the demo of our solution. I will say, though, that I mentioned at the beginning that I've been helping develop this for a while now. I wish I had this solution when I was in libraries. I did the manual thing with a very complicated Google spreadsheet, and it was hard, and not everybody could see it, and it was easy to make mistakes on it. I also had made a huge physical whiteboard that had magnets that had each magnet was a cover of one of our kits, and I had it broken into different sections, which was here's what's available, here's what's on hold, here's what's checked out, and I would move them between there. And that way when someone called, I could just glance at it and say, here's what's available. But even so, that was really tedious. It's not the best way to do that. So our solution that we have built, called the Mugo Library, gives you the option of having unlimited number of landing pages. Each landing page has a you can customize the lending terms for it. So if your book club kits check out for 2 months, you can have all of those on a page. And then maybe you have board games and these check out for a week. And each one has different criteria and can be organized differently. On the front end for the patrons, they have the way to go in and see all of the items and view those and go in and request them as needed. They can also search by item. And over the past couple of months, we have actually added so many new features to this. So they can search by typing in the search, or they can scroll to see something that interests them. This is my favorite though, and this is the ability for them to go in and see what's available on a specific day. So they know that their book club is going to meet on Friday, May 15th. They need to check something out on the 14th. They can select that and see these are all the kits that are available. They can click directly on that and then enter in the form, and it's going to request that and send to the patron. This also supports pickup for multiple branches. And one of the new features we added in here recently is the ability to add a customized schedule so that, maybe these items are only available in the winter. So you can actually set that so people, if they go into May or June, they wouldn't be able to request that. Or maybe your library isn't open on Sundays or Saturdays, which means you don't want someone to reserve a kit to be picked up that day because they're not going to be able to pick it up. You can set a custom calendar and choose which days certain things are available. Now, on the back end, we've made this as easy to manage as possible. On the back end, you can come in and you can add your library's logo. You can create those base schedules and set those up and configure when it's available. You can also set seasonal schedules, and you can also say, the library's closed on this holiday. Don't let people request books on that day. You can customize those. You can set up this base one that I'm showing here and apply it to all of your items, or on your individual landing pages, you can customize the schedule for each collection type that you are sending out. You can manage your branches, add in as many locations as you want, and you also customize the form and information that your patrons are submitting when they're requesting an item. And you can either do that same as the schedule, where there is a single base form that you apply to everything, but you can also customize each and every individual item. You can come in here, you can search across all reservations so that you can find a patron calls up and says, I can't remember what I requested, or if I requested something. You can search by name or email and it will pull up everything that they have reserved, pending or past. You can find that very easily. You have the ability to go in and view all pickup dates. And this is filterable by the collection type and also by the location. So this is helpful for when someone at one of your branches needs to know what is being picked up today. They can filter this and look and see that directly. For each of the different landing pages, there's so many different things you can customize with this. So how long an item checks out, how much advance notice you need as the admin to get this ready to send out, how much time between bookings. So if it's returned one day by a patron, how much time in between does it need to go back to its central location to be processed and checked and sent out again? How far in the future can people reserve this for? So can they request it up to a year, 2 years in advance, 3 months in advance? That's entirely up to you on here. We have multiple ways to get notifications through this system as well. So you can have a recipient that anytime someone submits a request, This is an internal recipient who's going to get an email that says, hey, this has been requested. Do you want to review this request? We also have a way to set reminders for when it is set to go out. So you can determine how much advance notice you need. So maybe someone requests a kit today. They put in a request today, but they don't need this until August. So you get the email that says, great, they've requested this. You're not going to look at that email again for the next couple of months. You can set a reminder in here that 4 days before this is due to go out, at that August date, these people on staff are going to get an email that says, hey, this kit needs to be sent to this location by this date. Don't forget. You can customize the email instructions that are sent to the patrons. The system sends a confirmation when they request a kit, when it is time for them to go pick it up, when it is time for them to return it. And you can turn off some of those if in your ILS it handles this is ready for you to pick up. Don't forget to return this. It doesn't have to be sent by our system, but it can be. And then you can customize the text within that. You also have the ability to skip the approval workflow, which means if a patron requests this, it's automatically approved. If it's available, it's going to be there for them. But maybe you have items that you need to look over and make sure you have all their contact information. Make sure they're actually a library patron. And in that case, you can have an approval workflow that you get that notification that a patron has submitted this. You click on a link and it takes you to that reservation, and you can approve or deny or move it or adjust it as you need to. These are some of our new enhancements. Again, here is that calendar where this one's going to be custom to this specific collection type. We also have the ability to suppress from homepage. So on here, you can have as many of these landing pages as you want. Those are all going to be listed here on the homepage. This is visible to patrons so they can look at your different collections, but maybe you want to use this internally only, but still want staff to have that front end experience. You'll notice that the board games are not listed there. That's because the board games have been suppressed, which means the only way to access this is with the URL that you share with your staff. This also keeps it from being indexed from Google. There's still a possibility someone could guess this URL, but the likelihood of that is fairly small. And you also have the ability to see when these are coming in. So you would know pretty quickly if this was a non-staff member who requested that. So you can now suppress that from the homepage as well. That approval workflow also, if we're looking at these individual items, you can see all the reservations there, and you can see the approve or the reject, and you can go in here and edit these as needed, and choose whether or not it's going to send the email response, or if you want to follow up directly with that patron as well. So we made this in hopes that it makes managing book club kits easier. We've got some great success stories from our libraries that are using it. And as I've mentioned, we are continually making it better and adding new features to it. The hard part, again, with book club kits is that people do want to request them in advance, and the ILSs just aren't set up to manage holds in the future like that. You can suspend a hold, but you can't really set it to say, I want this on a specific date, which is why using a third-party system like this makes it easier for staff and patrons alike. So I hope this has been helpful to you. We have been recording this. We will put this up online and send a link to this to review and view on demand. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the chat or the QA, or follow up with us at mugo.ca. We are more than happy to answer any questions you have or give you a longer demo of the product or just hear about your success with book club kits and how your community is using them. So thank you all so much for attending. So one of the questions we have is this system does not integrate with the ILS, and that is intentional. We can potentially do that for our all-in-one website solution for libraries that we have. The standalone does not integrate with ILS. Oftentimes, what libraries do for this in particular is they will still have these items in their ILS. They will have them show up in their catalog, but instead of being able to place holds in the catalog, it will have a link back to here. So, as I was saying before, the ILS just really does not handle this type of reservations well. So, you need something outside of it to manage. Now, once you have these reservations, you know that this patron's going to want this item on this date. You have the reminder to send it out to them. Once you're sending it out, then it's in your ILS, but that's an internal procedure. So you're putting it on hold through your ILS the same way you would any other item at that point. And that's also why some of our libraries have us turn off those automatic emails, because the ILS is managing that specifically. But no, this does not integrate directly with the ILS on the standalone. If you're interested in other options, we can talk about that. But like I said, that's more something for our full website solution when the website is integrated with the ILS. But that's an excellent question. Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in, and we are at time. Oh, nope, there are more questions. I will answer these. Sorry. Yes. So someone is asking if the software can send an email to the patron once the kit is ready for pickup. So it sends a reminder to the patron on the date that it is supposed to be picked up. So it does do that. And again, your ILS sometimes does that if it's already in the system, but the automatic emails that this sends out is confirmation of submitting the request for the item. If you have the approval workflow, it will send them the confirmation once the library staff member has confirmed it. It sends them a notice that the item is ready to be picked up, and it sends them a notice that they should return it by the due date. So a couple days before it's due, it will send them a note saying, don't forget to return this as well. Okay, I have one more question. I'm going to keep going as long as there are questions here. If it is not integrated with the ILS, how will it keep record that the books are returned on time? It keeps a record of how long the checkout is supposed to be based on the settings that you choose for that checkout length. So that is what it is basing those emails on. So if it is not returned on time, that's something that staff have to actually manage. So if it doesn't come back, then you can hide it in the back end so other people can't put it on hold. But it is not sending overdue notices if it doesn't come back. That's something that your ILS is doing, and the kit itself is in the ILS. It's just the scheduling system is outside of the ILS. Okay. Thank you all so much for your engagement. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, follow up by email if you have any others. We will